Welcome to Lesson 10 in Module 223, Advanced Ethics. Earlier in the course, we talked about the definitions of being a profession, and we lamented the fact that community support workers and educational assistants are paraprofessions. That means we're owned by the community and have a high expectation put upon us of principled work. But we don't have some of the resources that a profession would typically have, such as a standardized body of education, a clear code of conduct, or an organization that oversees all of that. Well, in the 1990s and early 2000s, I was privileged to be a part of an organization that attempted to do something about that. We created a professional association. Unfortunately, it didn't continue in the long term, but we can still learn a lot from the work that organization did. The organization was called the Community Support Workers Association of BC, and amongst the work that we did was that we created a provisional code of conduct. And at the preface of it, or the beginning of it, were 11 principles. Now, the organization was meant to be a voluntary organization, and as a result, it was partly adopted. Some agencies joined, some agencies didn't. And work was done by the government at that time to try and find something that was more of a regulatory body. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and in the wake of all that, the voluntary body just never really caught fire. These 11 statements, however, nicely encapsulate the principles that we've talked about, and they have really stood the test of time. So they provide you with another way of understanding the principles, or another way of being able to go through cases and say that they violate or upheld certain principles. Instead of saying the short form or the long form, you can simply do Standard 1 or Principle 11, whichever you prefer. And so that's what we're going to take a look at here. Principle number 1 said that professional community support workers are client-centered. They serve the needs of people with disabilities and mental health needs as their first priority. They understand that the furtherance of community living and psychosocial rehabilitation models will be based on the values and needs of those they serve before their own. So that's pretty similar to our first principle of being client-centered, but it also includes concepts of being collaborative and using a holistic approach, because psychosocial rehab models talk about that sort of thing. Number 2, professional community support workers are equitable, fair, and non-judgmental. Through their work and in their lives, they demonstrate that all people are equal and that everyone is worthy of respect, freedom, and dignity, regardless of race, age, ability, gender, religion, or lifestyle. So once again, you can see that these nicely align with the principles you were taught earlier in the course. Number 3, professional community support workers are committed to community and inclusion. In their work, they demonstrate that everyone deserves to be a meaningful and valued part of a community, a family, and a group of friends, and that communities are better and stronger when everyone lives together. Number 4, professional community support workers apply services holistically and comprehensively. They work for the well-being of the people they serve in all areas of their lives, including their education, communication, health, physical comfort, spiritual fulfillment, social skills, and relationships. And they adapt services to meet the changing needs of the people they serve. They provide services to all people in need, even when it's challenging to do so. So this idea of adapting and growing to meet people's needs is part of this idea of being a holistic service and client-centered service provider. Number 5, professional community support workers are advocates and supporters of self-advocacy. They support the people they serve to speak for themselves, and when needed, they speak and act on their behalf. They speak up and take action anytime they see that these principles are being jeopardized, even when no specific individual is at risk. They do so even when it's difficult to advocate. So you can see at the end of this that concept of advocating for professionalism or advocating based on principles is essential. Number 6, professional community support workers are honest. They approach their work with integrity and conscientiousness, which means that they use their best judgment and are fair, impartial, and dedicated to these ethics anytime their work might be involved or affected. This includes things like outside of the shift or in scenarios where, for example, a conflict of interest might be involved. We haven't talked a lot about things like our personal fitness in this course, but that would be another example. In a case example I gave you earlier where staff people came in on a Monday and were hungover and decided to change their practice, that's a good example of them not being ethical by showing up ill-prepared for work. So whether it's our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, we're supposed to show up with enough in our gas tank, so to speak, to be able to actually do our work with conscientiousness and to really be committed. Professional community support workers are committed. They consistently strive to achieve high standards and exceptional results. So you should never really be satisfied just with staying where you are. Number 8, professional community support workers are competent. They strive to be as capable, skilled, and informed as possible. They maintain currency of skills and knowledge and continuously work to improve their personal characteristics. They consult with other professionals when they need expertise beyond their own knowledge. So you can see this also introduces the idea that it's not enough for us to build our academic or cognitive knowledge, but also things like our metacognition and our interpersonal skills. Number 9, professional community support workers respect the privacy and ownership rights of the people they serve. They demonstrate this by safeguarding the private information, spaces, possessions, and bodies of the people they support. They do not intrude upon the privacy of the people they support without permission or legal authorization. They avoid all unnecessary intrusions and work to prevent intrusions by others. So you can see that this one in a way is missing something that we talked about earlier. And if the organization had continued, it might have evolved to include the respect and privacy of co-workers and the agency and the families of people, because those things are not mentioned here but are important. It also talks about intrusion, and it might also want to talk about control and not just intrusion. Number 10, professional community support workers are always honorable and accountable. They behave both at work and in life in a manner which reflects well upon their clients and their profession. They are open to scrutiny from the community, and they avoid all conflicts of interest. So once again, it's important to understand that these principles cannot be turned off when we go home from work, and it's also true that they can't be turned off when we no longer work in the field. We're supposed to still uphold them. Number 11, professional community support workers are empowering. They facilitate choices and honor decisions. They invite collaboration from families, friends, and other professionals to support the client in pursuing the highest possible quality of life. Hopefully these principles have been valuable to you as another way of sort of reviewing the main ideas. But most of what we've talked about is just embedded in this package of principles, slightly different wording or slightly different combinations, but they're all the same basic ideas.